market potential in Saudi Arabia for Danish suppliers to the aquaculture and fish processing industries. My name is Martin, and alongside me, Lisa Marie is online as well. And both of us are from the export network, Danish Export Fish Tech. Just some house rules before we begin.
Så det. Nå, kan du lige lukke døren, så kan jeg lige...
Please turn off your microphone and camera during presentations, just to ensure a better connection of this call. The webinar will be recorded and it will be shared with you afterwards. And you're more than welcome to ask questions. You can write them in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and then we will address the questions accordingly. But let's crack on with the webinar. We are very welcome to all of you. Welcome to you, the audience, and welcome to the hands-on experts that we have lined up as speakers today. All of them have extensive experience from Saudi Arabia in the field that we're talking today. So thanks a lot to Christine, to Tua, to Palmi, and to Timothy for wanting to participate today and share your insights. First off, Christine Albrechtsen from Pisco Group will be talking, and she has extensive knowledge on the strategies for aquaculture in Saudi Arabia and has many years of dealing with the market in Saudi Arabia. After that, Palmi Palmason from NIAM will give a recap of NIAM, and we'll talk about possible opportunities for Danish companies, both in regards to NIAM, but also in regards to the market in Saudi Arabia overall. We're also pleased that Timothy Graham from also joins us as a speaker, and he will supplement on Palmi's words. And Timothy Graham is from Topian Aquaculture Company, which is also a part of NIAM. And finally, Tua Mungsgaard from Danfoss will give us insight to what it takes to gain success on the Saudi Arabian market and share some of the experiences from his role at Danfoss. And Tua is also based in Saudi Arabia. Christine, let's go. I give the word to you.
Thank you so much. And I have a few slides that I would like to share with you. And let me just see. I think you can see it now, right? So very briefly about me, I work as Martin said at Pisco Group, a vendor-independent consultancy, aquaculture consultancy company in Denmark. We don't deliver anything apart from consultancy. Background, always worked with. I'm an engineer, not a biologist, as most people in the aquaculture industry. I have worked globally and internationally all my life, always in industries that have a relatively high level of complexity, so food, aquaculture, and before that, pharmaceutical industry. Since 2013, I have worked with aquaculture, and from the beginning, actually, in the GCC region, and specifically in Saudi Arabia. I have for quite a few years had a close collaboration with specific companies, but also with the Ministry of Environment and Water, and as a consequence of that, also the National Fisheries Development Program. Saudi aquaculture strategy is something that I would have really liked Philippos to present, which brings me to the next slide. I think many of you have probably met him or seen him. But as Philippus is traveling right now, he has shared his latest status with me, and I have tried to just pick the slides from his status and the strategy that I think is relevant for this forum. His full presentation that I have picked from, you can get that from me afterwards as well if you would like that. Yes, so all the slides that you can see here that has this purple thing are actually Philippus' slides from the September 24 update that he has given. I have just picked, and you can see that on the bottom on the page numbers, and I've shuffled it a little bit around to what makes sense for me. Because where I would like to start with is the overall strategy. So the development plan for Saudi Arabia when it comes to aquaculture, that is simply put based on the estimated population and the estimated seafood consumption. And that brings us to a number which is 648,000 metric tons. And of that consumption, they would like 65% to be produced in Saudi Arabia. That brings us to approximately 354,000 metric tons that Saudi Arabia would like to produce aquaculture in 2030. I don't think they really believe it's going to be 2030, but the ambition is there. Because if we look at where they are today, it's approximately 100,000 tons that they're producing. The majority is still shrimp, but as you can see, the share of fish that is produced is increasing, and that is also where the focus is. So one of my slides, very simple slide here is, how will Saudi get from 100 to 354,000 tons? So looking at the generic, you can say, aquaculture value chain, it all starts in the right side actually with the consumers. So we need consumers who will demand fish products, and that is something. It's very common that people in Saudi, they buy whole fish. So there's a focus on the secondary processing, on trying to increase the consumer intake of fish products. Then of course they need grow-out farms because that's where the fish are actually produced. And in the grow-out farms, you need to start out with fingerlings, so you need hatchery capacity as well. So simply put, those are the elements that they need in order to be able to increase the production in Saudi. So what they have done, or are in the process of doing, is first of all establishing a center of excellence, or a R&D center that they may not like me saying that, but it's not that different on the R&D side to what has been established in the Emirates or in Qatar in terms of R&D. But they have a strong focus also on the industry support. That brings us back to the fingerlings. So a lot of the R&D functions and the service functions that could be veterinary support and other stuff. Then they want to produce fingerlings and develop the hatchery capacity to be able to produce fingerlings along with training and the other services. In addition to that, because that's not going to take it, if you want to produce that much fish and shrimp, then you need more hatcheries. They are planning several hatcheries around the country to bring up the capacity for fingerling production. Fish also need food, so fish feed mills are planned, and I know that several discussions has been going on also with Danish fish feed producers on finding the right setup for establishment of feed mills in Saudi Arabia. Then we come to the big chunk of grow-out farms. And it's not only RAS facilities or only cage farms or only ponds. It's a combination. And that is because different production methods will be optimal for different species. And Saudi Arabia actually plans on a variety, of course, of species that they would like to produce. Previously, they were very focused on only the local species, but in this context, for Danish aquaculture companies, in the right bottom corner here, you will see both salmon, actually so much that there's 2 salmon, probably to make it fit with the picture, but also rainbow trout. So traditional local species, but also salmon and rainbow trout. I will come a little bit back to the trout because that is where we, at least in Denmark, have very unique experience. Processing, as I mentioned, is where it all starts. So processing facilities are planned, and in particularly there's a new area, something called Jasan Food City, where a lot of the downstream processing, not only for seafood production but also for seafood products, is planned to be established. And now, as an example of some of these grow-out initiatives, but not only grow-out, some of you I've put in this picture, which is from the delegation trip last year, where Mohammed Broom probably met some of you. He's the guy who, even though people said he was crazy, said, no, I want to look into this thing with trout. I believe that we can do trout in Saudi Arabia. So he set up a development program, starting with, you can say, 3 phases. First of all, getting knowledge on all the usual information about how to farm trout, but then also on trying to find locations in Saudi Arabia where that would be feasible. Next thing, phase 2, is the support production facilities. So that is, for instance, the hatcheries, but also other supporting facilities. And third, the investment opportunities. That is the actual grow-out farms. So in a test facility, they have actually done quite a few trial runs with trout with quite good results. We may not think that is very impressive. We have done trout in Denmark for many years, but they are quite pleased with their results. And then significant work has been put into finding these areas in Saudi Arabia that has low humidity and also temperatures that are relevant for trout production. And then phase 2, which is the hatchery establishment, but also a small 100-ton pilot facility, grow-out facility, has actually been established already. And that brings us to the phase 3, which are the 1,000-ton units that are planned. There's a schematic design with budgets and so forth already been prepared, because now they're looking for investors for these grow-out farms. As it is right now, that is 1,000-ton units. But of course, the plan is, as with many other similar thoughts, to establish several of those around the country in those locations where it makes sense. Yes. And that brings me back to the second last of Philippus's slides that I would like to highlight from the strategy. And I have circled here, attract investors and foreign players, because that is a key element in the aquaculture strategy in Saudi Arabia. One thing is to get funding for the projects, but maybe even more important is to establish partnerships where not only technology is brought in, but where also the know-how and experience with aquaculture operations are coming in with the funding, because they understand that for aquaculture operations going forward to be feasible and to continue to be feasible, these partnerships or joint ventures or whatever form you can establish the partnership in, that is what's going to make these operations continue to be successful. They have experienced quite a few times suppliers coming into the country and delivering technology and then leaving again and not giving them the support they needed going forward. That was about it. All of these initiatives on all the areas of the value chain, whether it's processing or feed mills or the grow out farms that are planned, key people who will be able to say more and engage you in these projects, they will be present at the CIMIC in February. That was it for me.
Excellent, Christine. Thank you so much for sharing the insights from the strategy on aquaculture. Does anyone have any immediate questions for Christine right now? Otherwise, we'll do the Q&A session a bit later. Next up, Palmi and Timothy, it's your turn to.
Yeah, I'll hand the mic
board.
over to. I'll hand the mic over to Tim to talk about the strategy and Topian Aquaculture Company, and then I'll follow up on the marine side.
Excellent. Thank you. Timothy, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to meet everyone and discuss Saudi Arabia today in the aquaculture sector. Christine, thank you for the slides, and good to see you again. Yeah, look, as part of what was presented previously, there is a drive to increase seafood consumption in Saudi Arabia as part of the 2030 vision. And of that total target that was mentioned in the previous slides, NEOM has been mandated to produce about 80,000 metric tons. NEOM is an area, for those that don't know, is one of the giga projects announced as part of the 2030 vision. And a region's being developed to help decouple Saudi Arabia from fossil fuel reliance, but also to develop next generation technologies across a number of sectors. One of those is food, and within that is aquaculture. So when we talk about NEOM, it's not a project, it's multiple projects within a vast umbrella of NEOM, and they're spread out over an area of 26,500 square kilometres. So it's quite a large region in the northwest area of Saudi Arabia that's being developed, and we have a coastline on the Red Sea. Hence, we're looking at aquaculture as part of this development. Of the 80,000 metric tons, only 20,000 tons of that is planned for marine or in-water production. So 60,000 metric tons is actually land-based. So there's a fair development that needs to go on, and in terms of species and then product development for the market. As part of the 20,000, we have a joint venture which was signed off this year and is being operationalized as we speak. I'm heading up that joint venture, and that's with a local partner called Dubuque Fisheries, who have been in existence for about 16 years. And they're a marine-based producer, around this year 1,800 metric ton, 1,800. And then with the expansion plans to 3,000, then scaling up to 5,000. And that's across three main species. We have sea bream, a local bream sort of alternative called Sabaiti, which was actually in that slide that was shown, and also we're looking at one of the Cereola species. That's the target three to start with. We also have a significant land-based facility, which again, Christine identified one of the issues is fingerling supply. And that is our land base has a hatchery that was actually built about 10 years ago, but we're just in the process of upgrading that. And that's got a capacity of about 42 million per year, but they're still well short of what is required in Saudi Arabia from sort of 2030 onwards. So we're moving towards providing the basis for the increase in production, but we're still only a facility that's probably 5 times what it should be, or 20% of what will be required in the near future. So that there is significant opportunity to develop further land-based assets, and it's mostly around new technologies, so recirculating systems, automation within those. Saudi has some, in terms of the local people, some sort of higher salaries, so we have to move towards automation on those. Plus the population is very young. The average population is less than 30, so they're very much about technology, and wish to move away from sort of manual based jobs and stay in that technology sector. So that's sort of where as Topian Aquaculture company is going. Then Topian itself, as I said, has other projects which are being developed. So it was announced, and Christine is quite aware of this one. We're doing a land-based salmon facility with a view to 10,000 tonnes that will be phased up to that level. That doesn't mean it will stop there, but once that's sort of proven and stabilised, then there will be an expansion as well further afield. Looking at local species, KAUST has done some very good work on identifying native species that have good aquaculture potential as well as good market potential. Of course, it doesn't always go hand in hand. Some species are easy to produce with no market potential, and other market potential species are hard to produce. So they've worked hard at identifying suitable species, and there are a number of those which are more suited to land-based and high-tech style facilities rather than traditional sea-based facilities. So again, there's going to be a need in the next sort of 5 to 10 years to develop land-based centres to accommodate those species. I will add that at the moment, the Saudi seafood sector is, I suppose, on a global scale, unsophisticated. The consumption per capita is very low. The drive is to increase that. And as the population, as I said, is young, as those people are returning from overseas, they're very much liking seafood in their diet, and so the demand is there. And so there is a transformation that is starting to occur across the value chain. From the retail sector back through. So it's a good time to be in the industry here. It is changing. It is changing, will change rapidly over the next few years. And there's very good support from the government level, as well as internal investment from local money, but they're certainly willing to attract external investors at the same time. And the technology providers, etc., are not here, so they are in the process of attracting those companies to come and establish themselves in Saudi Arabia to help underpin the development in the production. So I'll hand over to Palm. You can talk a little bit more, and then I might come back in later.
But how's that being solved now, Timothy? You say there's a lack of technology. How is it being solved now then?
So there are, Christine alluded to it, there are some projects that are here, and they're very so piecemeal, I suppose, without a determined strategy around how to grow it in an integrated fashion. And that's part of what I suppose NEOM has been mandated to do. So we have to develop and bring in new technologies and do commercial pilot work, not just small work, but actually show that they can be commercially viable on a larger scale. And then we're being used as I suppose, a beacon for the rest of the industry. So we are not closed. What we do, although those projects, I suppose, will have a degree of IP, but we need to demonstrate these projects and these operations to the rest of the kingdom. So we are open. We will partner with providers. We will bring them in. We will establish those projects, and Palmy can talk a bit more about those. But the idea is that they become a showpiece as well for the industry. So it is always a difficult question, about how do you get started, and I suppose that's where we're coming in now. NEOM is essentially public money, government money, and so it has to be used wisely, but it has to be spent in a way that will generate further revenue or increase livability for the country, etc., food security. So that's how they're managing that.
Yeah, and a lot of times we hear a lot of these presentations about what all of these industries want to do and intend to do. NEOM is very aggressively moving forward. This year, we have signed and we're expecting to close by the end of the year over $100 million in contracts, closing tenders that have already been closed. We're more than half the way, and tenders that are in the process of being closed. And what Timothy was mentioning, we have the Topian Aquaculture Company, that the former TFC, our joint venture, which is our vehicle to bring in both best practice and innovation into the kingdom. And so now that we've signed the JV, we're already ready to start initiating those projects. Our first project that we're launching this month, we're under deployment as we speak. We're putting a pilot of submergible marine pens into the sea with our partner InnovaSea from the United States. And that's a demonstration of how we can identify opportunities of moving the biomass down the thermocline in the highest temperature of the summer, potentially opening up viability for new species in the marine environment. We've also, in Q2 this year, signed two large contracts with close containment suppliers from Norway. We decided to do two contracts instead of one at the same time. We picked out what we felt was the leaders of that industry, and that in itself also gives us a leadership position in developing close containment in warm water environments. Close containment has primarily or only been developed for salmon in Norway as a mitigation against sea lice. What we're doing, we're taking the concept further. We're utilizing we're doing a fully enclosed strategy so that we can mitigate exposure to sun and extremely hostile environments from the temperature side, also from the salinity side. So we're choosing close containment suppliers that do not have corrosive materials. We've identified that in the warmest time of the year in the Red Sea, we have a significantly, or not significantly, but we're about 8 degrees less, below 50 meters of depth. And so that can give us access or change the climate from 33 degrees at the surface down to potentially 25 degrees within the environment, but give us similar densities to RAS and so on and so forth. So we've acquired two systems, two commercial grade 1,000-ton systems, signed that in May, and we're under manufacturing of those systems. And we're also closing a tender for our processing unit. This has to be a mobile processing unit, so it's relocatable because of our area. We don't have a permanent land use permit, so we wanted to demonstrate that we could drop a plant in there that's capable of doing 5,000 tons of processing, but also in the need, if we need to relocate that in the future to another site, and the system or the plant has the capabilities of being picked up and moved to another site. So our current site, the site that Topian Aquaculture rests on, will therefore have 5,000 tons of net pens which we're already in the middle of closing the tender for that, a full upgrade of the farm. We're going to buy top-of-the-line pens, barges, vessels, all required infrastructure, automated systems, remote feed centers, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be one of the most advanced net pen farm in the region. Then we're going to have the submergible pens. Then we're going to have the closed containment systems. So on the Tabuk Fisheries footprint that Tim is leading, in the next 3 to 4 years, you will see the most, one of the most, if not the most innovative marine site in the world. And we're going to have multiple systems, multiple species side by side being developed. We're also acquiring land outside of NEOM, where we will develop up to 15,000 tons additional capacity, and we're in the process of acquiring the land, doing the master planning of the area, identifying all the assets that we require to place there, and then we will launch the tender processes for all our infrastructure in the next 24 months.
Yes, I'll just add a little bit more on from that. So the NEOM board, when they approved the joint venture to be established with Tabuk Fisheries, actually did so as an innovation centre. So we don't only have a commercial bottom line, we actually are required to bring in and trial new technologies within this joint venture. Once they're then proven, that's where we're talking about establishing larger, more commercial operations outside of NEOM, and we'll incorporate those in. Plus, as I said, they can be used as a showpiece to develop, and not only for KSA, but for the region. As well as, sorry, Christine, I see your hand up, but I'll just keep going while I'm on a roll. Underpinning, I suppose, the system advancements and next generation technologies that we'll bring in, we're also looking at the biological side. So we are establishing a breeding nucleus, which has a genetic program attached to it. Of course, that will focus on the species that we are looking at the moment, but also, as I said, the greater collective that KAUS has identified. So we'll be working on the genetics, for those species through there, and developing high quality broodstock with offspring well suited for the region. And I suppose it's not only for us. I mean, we do have sea bream. The country is producing sea bream, and I suppose with rising seawater temperatures in the Mediterranean and increasing salinity levels, we're actually ahead of the game on that. We have high temperatures and high salinity, and so the genetic work that we'll put in to have better performing sea bream for those is definitely exportable technology, or IP, for us as well. Then added to that, we will be establishing a feed innovation centre, again, to develop better feeds suited to the region, again, to help with the species, depending on the system being produced, of course, so whether it's land-based or sea-based. So yeah, there's all the strategy evolves, so it's a holistic approach. So we're looking at all aspects, and that's as I said, why we're considered to be an innovation centre as well as the commercial side.
Yeah, and I can chime in very briefly about the logistics of working with us. So most of the people that we're working with, they've been coming into the region since the first CIMEC. The CIMEC that's next year is the 4th edition. So the guys that are working with us, they've been coming from the Norwegian pavilion or from the other stakeholders, and they've been visiting us frequently. One of the key things that I see as the reason why people may not participate in our tenders, for our larger projects, turnkey projects, or our larger scale projects, we normally issue tenders. So, and only registered suppliers to NEOM can our tenders. Setting yourself up as a supplier takes about 3 months if you're on top of your game. Can take 6 months depending on on your process. Being pre-registered allows you to bid. You need to be fully registered to be awarded. So we can't award any projects to anybody that's not fully registered and has gone through that process. So by default, if you're not there, it's going to be difficult. And then when people receive our tender documents, a lot of times there might be one person in the team that has done that has arrived on site. Sometimes our suppliers, sometimes or a lot of times the suppliers that do not participate are suppliers that want to work with us but have not been on the ground before, and they get cold feet when they read our tender documents and our supplier requirements, and they have not had that difficult conversation up front. They have not gone through the onboarding process. They have not mitigated their initial fear of doing business in the region by showing up. Therefore, they decide to hold back on the risk of signing up for it. So I would say that being able to work for us, being able to work with us, being able to partner up with us before the opportunity shows up normally requires a year of interaction, and in most cases, boots on the ground. Not because it's difficult to work with us, it's just people that haven't gone into the region before. They have so much bias to be overcome that they can't get from the position of the lack of knowledge to a proposal submission, taking into account our terms and conditions and the template agreements that we attach to our tenders. So that's why I say I urge everybody that wants to do work in the region, that wants to interact with somebody like us, for example. Like I said, we're writing checks and we're closing agreements as we speak, but it's not a lottery when people don't show up and just get a contract.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Christine, did you have a question?
It was exactly what Palmi just said, how to to get in a position of actually bidding, because I thought that was important.
Great. But yeah, just before we went live, Palmi, you also mentioned that people should move now instead of waiting 3 years, because then it might be too late. And also you mentioned, Palmi, something about the exhibitions, CMEC and Gulf Food Manufacturing. Can you elaborate a bit on those two matters you mentioned?
So there are certain regional events. So I'll use the Norwegians as a comparison because they're extremely active in the region, and they always have a pavilion in CIMEC from CIMEC 1. And I think that's primarily used to be Aspen Texum, who used to be in Dubai, who led that and pushed for that. And he always brought 10 to 15 companies on board. And he didn't just bring them to CIMEC. He would normally always figure out a way to use a regional event to do a roadshow, to utilize the opportunity. If you're in the region, you should, I always say, if you go to CIMEC, there's you're 15 or you're a couple of hours away from the rest of the region. So you can go to Oman, you can go to Dubai, and you can make a really good opportunity of it, and get a very useful data out of it. And like I was mentioning before, try to get rid of your fear of doing business in the region. Okay, we act as an innovation house for the region, so we can close more riskier contracts than some of the incumbents. Some of the incumbents, they want us, NEOM, to try to de-risk some more innovative technologies, and we've taken on some of those opportunities to bring in close containment, submersible pens, and also with our farming scale-up packets that we're signing this month, or in November, that's going to be a top of the line net pen packets, and all of these the other they have a direct access to us. So the other suppliers, they come to us. We roll out the red carpet. So I always say NEOM is a sales center. If we buy anything, then we show it. So Tharavatsis, Nakwa, anybody down the road from us, they come to us and they kick the tires of anything we buy. So we're not just a buyer, we're also a partner to showcase technologies. So I think that's very important because the Saudi industry is very small. They're very risk averse. And therefore, if you look the last 20 years, you see a lot of the OEMs playing down here. You see the guys, let's say the cost focus, the value focused suppliers from the Mediterranean, they're very present here. There's a significant presence from Greece and Turkey in operations. So they will obviously go to like what they know when they're procuring technologies. There's also a significant amount of Asian focused procurement. So the OEMs are very present. If people don't take this seriously, then they will just own the market for better or worse. People will then just buy that stuff. It doesn't last as long. It's not as quality focused. And therefore, the industry may not necessarily gain its legs. And that's why I made that comment before we started. I said, if you're not first in this conversation, you're going to be last. And you may not necessarily be able to join the conversation if you sit at home and wait for 3 to 5 years. Because we will not wait for those suppliers and then allow them to jump back in and cherry pick all the greatest opportunities 5 years from now. Then the OEMs are going to be the incumbents, and you've already lost the race.
Valuable points. Thank you so much, Palmi. Paul Peterson of Oxygard, you have a question?
Yes, I had some questions for both the gentlemen because we have been. I'm from Oxygard.
Turn on your screen if you want, Paul.
Yeah. Oh yes, I can turn on my screen. 1 moment. Yes, from Oxygard, and we have sold equipment in for the area for the last 20 years, and we are lucky enough to be in a lot of your projects, you can say. So we're glad for that. But I was just interesting because I heard about the innovation center you made, and I know that when you shoot out all the tenders, always a turnkey solution or something like that. But are you also looking into, for example, we have new ozone generators and so on. Are you also testing new specific technology like that?
Yeah, look, I can pick that one up. Quick answer is yes. Certainly the large projects are always tendered, but there is always the opportunity to be testing in commercial operation new technologies, new individual pieces, or if it's something like a new feed in the larval stages, etc.
Yes.
So yes, there is always that opportunity to come in and I suppose test, trial, and co-develop.
Okay, then we have some ideas. See you.
And also, one of the things that we try to do, we try to aggregate our partners into certain key events. So, for example, CIMEC. So in those cases, because we're not always advertising who we're working with. Okay, so we haven't issued the press releases on any of those projects that I'm mentioning. So so it's very difficult to understand exactly who we're working with, what projects are in operations, and what are the opportunities for potential sub-suppliers to jump in and be of value and so on. But events such as CIMEC and all of those, that's normally the places where we aggregate our suppliers as well. So if you're speaking with us there, most of the time we have our whole team there.
Yes.
Most of the time we'll also make ourselves available around that event if people want to show up and visit and say hello following the event, then we're always available for that. We can coordinate that, but it also gives you an opportunity of interacting with our suppliers and see if there's any there's any white space available there or any opportunities to jump in on some of the projects that are being designed.
Yes, I know. I was there the last time. It was quite impressive booth you had there.
Yes. And so people don't look at Saudi Arabia as a player, as a leader in the region, because we're so young. But if you've taken the time to observe what's been happening, there is significant push to increase the capacity in the kingdom. And so being on the ground at the beginning stages is similar. It's very similar. If you look at Chile 20 years ago, why was Bader ahead of Marel? It's because Marel had a guy in Portimont that was doing business development, and Bader had an infrastructure on site with spare parts. And so they took a lot of the business away from Marel just because Marel was flying in spare parts from another continent, and Bader was able to turn around 2 to 3 times faster. You would wait for 7 days for a spare part from Marel, and you'd get your spare part from Bader in a week, in a day. So it's just about, and everybody wanted to be there on the ground. Everybody wanted to be at the beginning of that industry. It was extremely fragmented, and therefore the suppliers didn't have time to wait, even for the biggest guy in the world, to have time for them. So if you don't understand the environment, and if you don't understand the region, you're going to make the wrong assumptions to what people need at the time that they need it.
Yes, I fully agree.
Well,
Perfect. Thank you so much.
So,
Yeah.
so I would just say one, not really related to exactly the Topian aquaculture, but I suppose an example of how serious, apart from the numbers that have been thrown around for 2030, etc., and growing consumption or growing aquaculture production, how serious the government is in getting aquaculture production sort of advanced. Just a sort of a bit of background, I'll wind it back a little bit. NEOM had a food sector, and then that became the NEOM Food Company, and then it transitioned to Topian. The chairman of Topian is the Minister for MIWA, and the chairman of NAQUA is also the Minister of MIWA. So the government is taking a significant stance in probably the two largest producers, and that is in order to try and push and drive the industry forward. So that wouldn't happen certainly in Australia. There'd be some conflicts there, but that's how Saudi operates, and that's how they're trying to drive it forward now and do it that way. So, and certainly on Topian Aquaculture's board, we also have a very senior member of MIWA as our board member. So we have eyes on everything that we do at my level, and then at the next level up to Topian level, and that obviously goes straight through to the ministry level. And of course, at the ministry level, then it's into the into HRH. So certainly, it's an area of great focus at the moment.
Sounds like it. Yeah. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing your valuable input. Much appreciated. I think we're going to go a bit over time. I hope that's okay for everyone. About 15-20 minutes, and I hope that's okay. Because
we only have a Friday afternoon Coke to get to. Unfortunately, I can't.
Impressive, a Coke.
I can't go down to the local bar. So
no,
this is my Friday here.
A Diet Coke will do. We'll have to do.
Yeah.
Tua, are you here? See, are you able to turn on your screen? Yep, there you are. Now it's your turn, Tua. And you're based in Saudi Arabia, and you work for Danfoss, and you'll share some experiences on what you experience in the field locally. I'll give the word to you.
I do though have to go short because I have an exhibition on 17 world-class stadiums that I need to go and look at because we're doing World Cup here in 3040. But guys, I don't know how many of you have actually been to Saudi Arabia. Some of you have. I can recognize some of the names from the time when I was working at the Danish embassy. Just to start with, Saudi Arabia is the size of Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Germany, France, Italy. And very few of us actually realize, okay, this country is actually a huge, huge thing. The population is only 33.5 million. And yes, we're talking about NEOM, which is the size of Belgium. So NEOM, which is actually a state within the state, and we talk about having two states or two systems in one country. And NEOM, when you look at NEOM, they will have their own ministries. So yes, we talk about Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture, MIWA. But what we in the base economy are looking at, we're looking at NEOM as they're going to get their own set of rules. They're going to get their own regulatory bodies compared to the rest of the country. So when Christina and Filipos, they talk about fisheries in the rest of the country, it's actually two different states that we're talking about. Timothy mentioned that there's a lot about diversification in Saudi Arabia, that we want to move away from the oil production, which is very true. On the 3rd of November in 2018, Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture closed for the water for food for the production of alfalfa. Alfalfa is the feed that cows eat in Saudi Arabia. Now, the significance of this is that at this point, Saudi Arabia realized, okay, there's something about water, desert, there's not so much of it. We need to think about what we're doing here. When you look at the coast of Saudi Arabia, there are 17 of the world's largest desalination plants. And I'm sitting in Riyadh. Riyadh, there is 450 kilometers to the coast. That means that you will have some big pipes of water coming into Riyadh. The significance here is that in 2018, we actually suddenly got a price on water. So there's a big change in the economy. There's a big change in what is happening in the country when it comes to uses of water. And that's why Saudi Food and Drug Authority, they have a mandate together with Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture to start increasing the food production in Saudi Arabia now. We're not just talking fisheries, we're also talking poultry. We're talking the fact that if you fly over Saudi Arabia, you'll see these big round circles of greeneries. That is going to be less and less because that's consuming too much water. So the reason why they were looking at fisheries as an opportunity for growth in food is that there's less water consumption compared to some other food productions. Al Mara'i, they're building meat factory because they do have their dairies here, but they're trying to get the food for the cows coming from abroad. So when you're looking at fisheries and when you're looking at this project, the National Fisheries and Development Program, which is now also MEAT, they're looking at, it's very much a question of how do we optimize the consumption of water and then also energy. So these are two aspects that when you talk about this that are really important for you. A couple of other things that is not related to the fish industry, because Christina and Palmi and Timothy are much more knowledgeable about that me, so I will not even dare to go into that direction, is generally speaking about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a country, you got to be here. It just works that way. It does not work by flying in, having a couple of meetings, and then sending emails. Emails, by the way, don't exist in Saudi Arabia. Everything works on WhatsApp. So when you come here, I encourage you not to have a business card, but I encourage you to have a QR code on your phone so that you get into people's phone numbers immediately. We work on WhatsApp. We work on messages. We work on speaking messages. We do not work on emails. So when you come here, and if you do participate in the summit, which I encourage you to do, make sure that those are very, very small, basic things that actually make a very, 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 very big difference when you're doing business in part of the world. When you speak to NEOM, maybe it's different because the demographics of the NEOM population is a bit different than the rest of Saudi Arabia. So do take note of that. In addition to that, you need a Saudi partner or family. The current company that I'm working with, we don't have a Saudi family together with us. We're a 100% owned company, which limits us in some aspect because we don't have a Saudi family that will be able to help us. And that's actually something that is important. So when you go to Summit, look also for a potential partner for you, and you have to understand who is this person or who is this family that you're working with. We are an economy that is not based on making money. We're still an economy that's based on relations. We're not doing business because we necessarily only want money. We want it because we have good relations with people. We'll do business with people that we have good relations with. Finally, he mentioned the 3-year process, or talked about 3 years. I can only echo that. It takes time. Now, it takes time, not in the sense that there's no benefit in it. It takes time, and there's a big benefit in it. Then we also need to understand about Saudi communication, the way we communicate here, and the way Danes communicate. Danes, 2 + 2 is 4. That's exactly what it is. In Saudi Arabia, 2 + 2, that can be 3, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe 6, 7, 8, or 9, and it can be very, very big. So when we know here in Saudi Arabia that somebody is going to say, yeah, we're going to make this huge project, it's going to be absolutely amazing, it's ready by the end of next month, we all know it's not that big and it's not ready next month, but we still need to be perseverant and continue working on the project. So it's important to understand the scope of the way the communication is. We as Danes, we come and we say, okay, fine. I say A, it's A. But A in Saudi Arabia may mean something different. So don't be discouraged about the fact you may hear something, but real life is maybe a bit different. Going back to 2018, I heard about the fish farms, and I heard about how big it's going to be and how fast it's going to be, and the Saudi Industrial Development Fund and how much money they're going to put into it. And still looking today, these projects are still going quite slow. Some of them, mainly in NEOM, are the ones that are moving the fastest. That does not mean it's not going to happen. It will happen, and we need to be agile. We need to follow these projects very, very closely, because one day it really will happen. Make sure that we understand that it's a network-based economy. It's a network-based business that we're working on. You know somebody, you name drop somebody, you have reference lists. Do not refer to Dubai. The scope of Saudi Arabia has changed dramatically. In the past, we're saying, yeah, we want to follow Dubai and everything. Saudi Arabia wants to be the market leader. Whenever you say that, yeah, we have a project that we've done in Dubai, people will get to the point where they'll turn around and walk away. There is an unofficial fight between the UAE and Saudi Arabia, in the sense of Saudi Arabia, they know that they've been sleeping for many years, and they are the powerhouse. It is the place that is biggest. It is the place that has most power. They have most oil. They have most money. They haven't done much with it in the past, so right now they're changing that. So my best reference is always to say that you have references in the region, but do not point out the reference that you may have in the UAE, as that is not a good scope for many Saudis that you will interact with. I can only encourage you to participate in the summit. I've visited a couple of times. And then take everything that you hear with a calm set, because it is a good story that is told, and it does take a bit longer than the timelines that we see. Philippe has been around for a long time, and he knows this, but he's also still continuously promoting this. And Christina has been here and visited. She's seen the different sites that are here. And she also knows that, yeah, it's not all happening tomorrow, but it's one step at a time. But what is very interesting is also what Palme said. It's about technology. The reason why we're getting into different industries is because, as Timothy was talking about, 1/3 of the population, no, 60% of the population are below 30. And we got to create jobs for them. And we're not going to create jobs by having them walk in the street or build something. They have to have technology heavy, savvy jobs. And the young population of Saudi Arabia is definitely in that scope and do want to do that work. So when you look at the technology in, for example, the fishery production, that is where it becomes really interesting. And that leads to the next stage. And when you do start selling in Saudi Arabia, you need to talk about training local talent. That is one of your key assets to be able to sell. We can train people. We can make knowledge transfer. We can make sure that there are locals that start getting this information. And that's another aspect. I have, even though I only have 22 staff members in the Denpos here, 6 of them are Saudi graduates. And they are always with me, standing next to me, saying that this is some of the things that I'm transferring into Saudi Arabia. It's marked as, Saudi Arabia is marked as the second most difficult country to do business with within the Middle East. I'm telling you that because as Danes, we're very ambitious and we want things to go very fast. In Saudi Arabia, there's a huge potential, but it does take time and it takes perseverance, and you got to be present. So coming to Samak or coming again, and if you go to Samak, put already into your budget, you're going to come 3 to 4 times. Don't come during Ramadan, don't come during Eid, don't come during July or August. Come at other times than that. And make sure you're going to come 2 to 3 times in a year. Otherwise, it's not going to make sense for you. If you do come, I'd be happy to have a coffee with you No beers, no gin tonics, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that tour. You're welcome to turn on your screens now, and then we'll do some, if you have any questions, and Q&A session, and Lisa Marie, my colleague, will facilitate that.
I will just say one thing quickly. To mentioned it right at the end there. You do have to like coffee in Saudi Arabia. Business is done over coffee, and they're quite long meetings. So yeah, it is a requirement to like coffee.
Yeah, no, so Saudi Arabia is not salmon. And everybody that's been primarily focused on salmon for the last 20 years needs to get out of their comfort zone, because salmon makes us lazy. It's so predictable. It's getting predictable. It's getting easier. And all of the problems that we had 25 years ago, they've been ring fenced in a way that we have solution providers, and we've distributed the responsibility for getting things done in between key stakeholders. So if I'm in Norway, I have such a network of people so that I can have a 9 to 5 if I'm in the salmon industry in Norway. If we're in warm water aquaculture in the Red Sea with brand new species, with brand new locations, new types of feed, new types of technologies, we're away from our supply chain, and you can't sleep. So you have to get out of your comfort zone when we start going away from the salmon industry into those new industries and participate in the growth of those industries. We have to remember what it used to be like 25 years ago in Chile, what it used to be like 30 years ago, even in Chile. It was the Wild West, and it was an extremely difficult time, bankruptcies, and people were killing a lot of fish. And that's what the region is going to experience while they find their own place and their own way of doing things with the species that they're dealing with. So if you're not willing to dedicate that type of attention to the industry, then you're not going to become the close partner that people will rely on and then prioritize in the following 10 years after you dedicated the first courting period, support period, and all that, like Ture was mentioning, knowledge transfer and support, ring fencing and scaffolding the industry, like we had to do down in Chile when we were starting. That industry went bankrupt 2 or 3 times before they were able to start making profit. So you have to participate in the early stages and understand what the role of a participant in that phase is while you're disrupting it. And it's not a 9 to 5 type of a business. So we need to be there, and that's why I said in the beginning, if you're not first, you're last. Because we won't prioritize you if you just want to cherry pick the times and the opportunities that you want access to.
Great. Thank you very much, Palmi, for all your good points. And thank you to all of you. And as Martin mentioned, you can put on your camera so we can see all of you. That would be really nice that we can see all of you again. Anybody who has questions so far? Otherwise, I'll try to ask a few questions because many of you'll probably have different points of experience with the Saudi market right now. Pau, you mentioned before, just to pick you mentioned before you have been doing some business already in Saudi. Could you possibly give a short intro to what have been your strategy on the market? Would you like to share a few words on that?
Yes, I can do that. We made a decision, I think it's about 20 years ago, that we want to go into the region, and we know that if you want to do business in that region, you have to be there, as Palmi also says, constantly over and over again. And it takes a long time to get the confidentiality at your clients, and they have to believe you and see the equipment and so on and so on. But it is a slow thing, and you just have to build it up. But when you're first there, they are very trustly and keep buying from you. But you have to have the long strategy, as Tu also mentioned. If you want to go into the region, you have to. We said 7 years. You have to be there for 7 years before you expect to get any orders. I think it will go faster today if you enter the market today, but at the time when we started, I think it took a long time for us to really get anything big. You can say we sell a lot of the handy portable meters. The last time I was a CIMIC, they bought everything I had on the stand, except my back cover was the only thing I didn't sell. Else everything was ripped from the stand, you say. So I should have bought much more. But anyway, it is a growing market, and a market that I think everybody should consider very seriously.
Have you been experiencing any changes over the the last year, for instance, with business? Because with the unrest in the region, that might be a question that people ask themselves. Have you experienced any changes at all?
No, not at all. I think that what we have experienced, that like Tu also said, that you have always coming over and say we want to build 1,000 tons of trout or whatever, and then you only have 10 hectares or whatever, and you say no, you cannot build a fish farm on that. So there's a lot of knowledge you have to get out there. I think NEOM is much more professional. They know what they're doing, you can say, but you still have a lot of clients down there who just have, because the government had this big interest and they heard fish farming is the right area to go. So you have, I'd say you have the whole range of customers, you can say. So it's not like you have a lot of professional, like if you go to Norway, they're all professional, they all know that this is salmon and what they want and so on. Down there you have it like when you go in other new developed areas, you can say, where you have some who have in fact a fish farm and some who just have heard fish farm is interesting and so on. So you just have to be prepared on that. Is it's a market type you go into, you can say. So you have a lot of discussion with people who where the project will never be to anything or be something. Yes.
Yeah. So Ian, you have a question. Is that to Power, or is it in general?
It's not a question. It's probably just reinforcing what Pal and what Palmi have mentioned. It's about dedicating resource and time to these projects. We were fortunate to be part of the delegation which Christine organised with the Saudi delegation, and on the back of that, we've been working very much or very closely, you could say, with Mohammed Broom, who was also mentioned in the presentation, on the 1,000 metric ton trout farm. But we worked as part of a collaborative group, really in defining what were the heating and cooling loads required just on a 500 metric ton farm that they could then scale and use as a blueprint for the 1,000 metric ton farm. So we took that opportunity, spent quite a bit of time working with quite a number of different teams, both on the design side, on the consultancy side, and also with Mr. Broom. So I'd certainly say put aside your time and your resource to dedicate activities in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much, Ian. Anybody else who wants to say something? Pau?
No, but I can mention that if you say Oxyguard, we are a very small company because we are not the turnkey solution part. So it can be difficult for a small company like us, you can say, to get in, because often it's one of the big turnkey supplier who delivered, you can say. So we have to try to push and make attention about your product. So in fact, like it's Palmin or Timothy who say, no, we want this kind of pump, or we want this UV, or we want this monitoring system and so on, because in fact this is the guy who have the final decision. They're in fact the one who bring the money in, you say. So because often if it's just a completely turnkey solution, you never know what they will come with of things, because often it's a bottom price they're looking at and so on. So for us, it's important to be there to show that they have to specify that we want this door in the building, we want this pump, and we want this because we know this is quality and so on. I can mention a project we made in China. It was exactly the same because we thought we would never get into China with a big eel project we had out there. And but in fact, they specified that they want this and this and this. And if you want to do that also in the Middle East or in Saudi, you have to be there to show them that this is the way and so on. So I think if you are as us, as a small company that only deliver a small part, we are not the one who make the turnkey solution. You have to be in the market to show that you have the quality they need.
Thank you, Pau. We have had a lot of very interesting perspective on this. Do we have some in the audience who are considering to enter the market and have some questions in that regard? Feel free to ask. Otherwise, Kurt from Desert Access, I know that you are. I hope you are still there. You have just been in Saudi Arabia with a smaller delegation. Could you tell a little bit about your work and your perspective on the market and what's going on right now? Are you still there, Kurt? No?
I think maybe he left.
He left. Okay, then he cannot. He can,
But
of course, not.
I would actually like to just follow up, just a brief comment on what Pau said. I think my experience is that overall, the clients, but also on the ministry level, they are looking for quality. So when Palmi said we have Greek, we have Turkish, we also have Chinese equipment coming into the region, it is our job to tell them what quality means. So down to the specifications that Pau talked about, what difference does it make if you buy a pump in China or a Grundfos pump in Denmark or a Desmi, or what does it actually mean? Because, and that is on us. You can say to translate, yes, you may have a higher cost when you buy it, but if it lasts 3 times as long and the energy consumption when you use it is lower and so forth. So that is on us to explain what quality actually means when they look at their business, right? How is that reflected in their CAPEX and OPEX?
I wanna make a comment on this. 20 years ago when I was down in Chile, one of the reasons why some of the guys that were starting out, Aqualine, which is now Scale, and Aqua and those guys, were able to make the case of buying quality was also because Chile had been approved by the export finance agencies in Norway, and the Chinese, you just pay up front. There's no credit terms, there's no support. So it's instant and cheap gratification. So how can you mitigate that attractiveness of the price? Well, if you can move your cost of procurement from CapEx into OpEx, that's the way, because everybody wants to buy a fully loaded car, but if they only have what's in their pockets, they're going to buy the bare minimum that they need. And in most cases, they might not be able to buy the winter tires that you need for the difficult season or this or that. But if it comes with financing capabilities, you're going to be able to move into your operational budget significant amount of your procurement. So that's the government's responsibility to start doing the due diligence on the region, on the country, and on the stakeholders, so that you can come with a potential risk mitigation packages, backstops for your debt providers, and all those tools that built up the Chilean industry. Okay, it wasn't that everybody wanted to buy the best equipment from Europe and wanted to pay that upfront in cash. When I was dealing with Aqualine and Aqua, they came to me and said, you sign on the dotted line and put 10% down, and the rest can be put on debt, and you start servicing your debt as soon as you pull your first harvest out of the water. That's such an easy conversation. Now the Chinese are just non-existent in that conversation because they're not offering you the convenience of long-lasting equipment structured financing approach. So the suppliers need to push their government to come in with a unified approach. We're working with the export financing groups in Norway. The conversation started 2 years ago with them, with Exfin and Innovation Norway. Timothy and I were leading that conversation from the NEOM side, demanding that they would look at us because we were going to write checks, and now we've proven that. But the industry needs to push up, and we push from our side, so that the agencies then say, okay, we're going to make this available because we're going to prioritize this region, and we're going to create some risk mitigation tools that allow our suppliers to get a leg up on the competition that doesn't have those risk mitigation tools from the cheaper alternatives. So by being here, you're going to say, okay, now we're going to dedicate our attention to the region. So we need now our governmental agencies to step up, do the due diligence, figure out how to follow up with us so that we can have these packages. Does that make sense?
I would say IFO is not afraid of the region. They are evaluating several, but they do it project by project. It's not like they pre-approve a specific country.
So we buy some equipment initially, and then you follow up, and when you scale up, there's just tools available, so that this is not a capex decision. So you can only do that if you have an industry approach. A single supplier is not going to drive that conversation. That's why it needs to be more unified. And like I was mentioning before, you don't have to look at Saudi in isolation. Look at it as an opportunity to visit the region on a regular basis, do your business development, go to the UAE, go to Oman. We're all open for business. Qatar is there also trying to play as well. And it's just a skipping away between those places. So you can knock all that out in a week and touch ground on all of those places.
Sorry, you couldn't hear me. Thank you very much for sharing all your insights. I think Martin will be wrapping up.
Yeah, just thank you so much to all the speakers and all the input from the audience as well. It's been really great. Just a bit from our side. CMEC has been mentioned a few times during this webinar as well, and we are looking into organizing a Pavilion of Denmark at CMEC, which will be held in early February 2025. And the deadline for registration for this is on the 8th of November due to the further planning of the project. And something not related to Saudi Arabia right now is some upcoming physical meetings in Denmark, where on Tuesday, on the 5th of November, we will meet in Glyngøre, where we will have the networking meeting there, where 50 participants are registered at the moment. And also on the 11th of December, we will do a workshop where the focus will be how can collaboration between suppliers to the aquaculture industry in aquaculture value chain be strengthened and improved. And that's something which has been in request from many members in the Fish Tech Network. So we will address that on the 11th of December. Other than that, we will say thank you so much for participating today. You will receive the recording once it's ready to be shared. And and if you have any questions, get hold of us. And thanks again to Christine, to Palmi, to Timothy, and to Tua for being speakers on this webinar. Have a great afternoon and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.